This is a 160 Q&A practice test. Plaintiff attorney, Mr. Blake, capital B-L-A-K-E. Defense attorney, Ms. M.S. period Rios, capital R-I-O-S. And we'll start with defense attorney. Ready? Here we go. So his seeming sort of withdrawn or cut off, did you attribute that to his being a recent immigrant, or did you think something else was going on? Objection leading, sustained, why don't you try again? Okay, well, let me ask this. What, if any, concerns did you have about Tamerlan when you observed his demeanor and his interactions or lack thereof? Well, I mean, you get children, students of all types, all personalities, but when you see someone who chooses to set themselves apart, you want to know why. I mean, we really feel that community is important for these kids to be a part of something, which was one of the reasons I brought him in. When I heard his story, he came to me, asked me to join the group. He really was under-trained for the group at that point, but he seemed impassioned. I want to do this. I tried to lay out for him why he wasn't the best candidate, and normally someone in his situation I wouldn't permit to join this group, not at this level of his piano experience. However, one of the things that I try to do, that the school tries to do, is to engage students in community, and it seemed clear to me that he was fairly new to the country, certainly to the school system, that this might be a good opportunity for him. So I'll often make exceptions for students for various reasons if I think that it might be a benefit. So can I just ask you to explain a little bit more? So what is the nature of this class? Well, it's a jazz ensemble. It meets once per week in the evening. It's an elective as a music course. The prerequisite is that you be a solid, reasonably well-trained musician to begin with, because from there you move on into areas of improvisation and creation, arranging, and you have to have a good solid set of basic skills. My understanding is that he had 1 semester of piano class, which really doesn't qualify you, but he was I think I used the word impassioned before. He made it clear to me he really wanted to try this. He was very interested. I knew he didn't have a piano at home. At least that's what he told me, so we agreed he would use the piano lab at school whenever he could, before and after school. That's a burden on a student, and we discussed that, and I told him, look, I'm going to let you try this. I want you to have the opportunity, but to be fair, you need to know this is not going to be easy. This is going to be a burden on you to keep this up, and we'll have to talk along the way, so it might be too much for you. He seemed appreciative of that. He thanked me. I took him at face value. And is this a group that performs? They do, at least twice a year, generally more. And as the year went on, how did he do? He made a good effort at first. He kept up more or less in the early stages, but as the work became more sophisticated, it was clear he was having a really hard time keeping up. Did you make a decision as a result of that? Ultimately, we met a couple of times for extra help after school. As always, he was respectful, but he wasn't able to keep up with the class, so I made the decision. There were a couple of, I guess you could call them, warning conversations. I told him he really needed to try to find a way to get in there to make the work happen. As I said, we had a couple of extra help sessions. I finally said to him, look, if we don't have some meaningful progress in the next few weeks, I can't let you play in the spring concert. you're not going to be ready. This is a team effort. I said, I want you to respect what you tried to do, the difficulty of your position, but I can't put you on that stage if you're not ready. It's not fair to the rest of the ensemble. How did he respond to that? Well, he didn't yell at me, but I guess it's fair to say he glared at me. I won't say I was ever nervous in his presence, but I was definitely not being able to read him. I was uncomfortable. I never knew how he would respond. Again, he showed so little aspect of himself in class. It was hard to know how he would respond to any particular situation. He glared at me. He was not happy. He argued respectfully, but the look in his eyes was not pleasant. I wasn't surprised by that, but not really knowing, not understanding him the way I felt I did most of my students, I wasn't sure to what extent he would. I didn't suspect any sort of physical altercation or out of control altercation, but I wasn't comfortable. I didn't know where he would take that. Had you, by the way, discussed your concerns about Tamerlan with any other members of the faculty? There was a teacher next door who had met him, and I really don't recall under what circumstances, but we did speak of him a couple of times. And what concerns were expressed? Objection sustained. What concerns did you have about him? He didn't seem to be adjusting socially, at least to the classroom. I wasn't aware of his situation outside, but it was very unusual for someone to come in week after week and remain isolated. I'd had many students with language difficulties in the past, but there always seemed to be a way, some touch point, some interface with the other kids somewhere with me, and I never found that with him. After you had this conversation with him where you felt he was not really able to participate, what happened? Did he remain in the class? Well, we had a couple of these in advance of his actually leaving the class. You know, he made kind of promises that kids make, but it didn't happen, and I understood. I didn't judge him for it. It was a difficult situation. When we had the discussion, it was perhaps 3 weeks, a month before the concert. As I said, he was not happy. Did he end up withdrawing from the class? He did. I made an agreement. All right, we have one word on the word list. Tamerlan. Capital Tamerlan. And that's it for the word list, and that will conclude our 160 Q&A practice test.